Crane Durham's Nothing But Truth on AFR Talk.
Welcome back, Crane Durham's Nothing But Truth. Can you imagine if Ted Cruz were a liberal, what the news networks would be doing for him? They'd be saying, 2016, this guy's a maverick, this guy's amazing, how does he do it? But he's a conservative, so he's being called every name in the book. Sad. He made some great statements regarding the issue of the filibuster that he has launched. If you've been following the Facebook page for American Family Radio, Crane Durham's Nothing But Truth, I was on there commenting. You all have been on there commenting on the filibuster, and very good stuff. Good stuff. How do you say that? Well, think about what he was walking into. Remember, this is about not allowing Harry Reid to strip the bill of the defunding measure of Obamacare. And in order to get to that process, he just needs 51 votes. So what Cruz is doing is saying, I'm going to do a filibuster. So in order to vote to get to that process, it'll take 60 votes. But as you've heard, a lot of Republicans disagree with this strategy, and they're going at Cruz. Understand, they're all united on getting rid of Obamacare. But we are really seeing a breakdown between the establishment and the Tea Party Republicans, if we want to put it that way. Certainly that's how the narrative is being shaped by the mainstream media, because what they want to do is say the Tea Party are nuts. They're anarchists. People who agree with them are kooky. And I will tell you this, I may be kooky on some things, but when it comes to Obamacare, nothing kooky about me or you or any American who understands that what was promised has not been delivered. Nevertheless, Harry Reid, what a statesman. The motivational speaker himself, passion in his voice, went after the Tea Party and Ted Cruz. And this was the opening salvo, so to speak, when it came to the filibuster specifically and the Tea Party. Here is the majority leader in the Senate, Democrat from Nevada, Harry Reid. Roll it.
Bill that defunds Obama and his health care plan is dead on arrival in the Senate. The Affordable Care Act has been the law of the land for 4 years now. Democrats are willing to work with reasonable Republicans to improve this law. But we will now understand that there's an anarchy movement that's afoot. The lead editorial in the New York Times Wednesday of last week said that. But we're not going to bow to Tea Party anarchists who deny the mere fact that Obamacare is the law. We will not bow to Tea Party anarchists who refuse to accept the Supreme Court ruled Obamacare to be constitutional. And we will not bow to Tea Party anarchists in the House or in the Senate who ignore the fact that President Obama was overwhelmingly reelected a few months ago. These fanatics really point to disapproval for Obamacare as justification for taking the federal government and our economy hostage to their demands.
Pretty strong stuff when you think about it. And he continued. Roll it.
What they fail to mention to the American people and to the Senate and to the House is that 59% of Americans either support the law or wish it were even more far-reaching and transformative of our health care delivery system, according to a CNN poll. The vast majority of Americans, including those who disapprove of the health care law, want Congress to work to improve it, not to tear it down. And according to a new CNBC poll, Americans overwhelmingly oppose defunding Obamacare, especially if it means shutting down the government to do so. So, Mr. President, the facts are that the vast majority of the American people are satisfied with Obamacare. The simple fact remains Obamacare is the law of the land and will remain the law of the land as long as Barack Obama is President of the United States and as long as I'm Senate Majority Leader. And
so we had Senator Ted Cruz looking at the poll numbers and recognizing that there all is and always will be a fluid situation with the American people, considering that over half, 53 to 57% of Americans have disapproved of Obamacare since its passage and even before, but never let the American people get in your way. And that was the attitude of Ted Cruz, highlighting that attitude from the Senate as he opened the filibuster this afternoon. Here is the senator, junior senator from the great state of Texas, Ted Cruz. Roll it.
All across this country, Americans are suffering because of Obamacare. Obamacare isn't working. And yet, fundamentally, there are politicians in this body who are not listening to the people. They're not listening to the concerns of their constituents. They're not listening to the jobs lost, to the people forced into part-time work, to the people losing their health insurance, to the people who are struggling. A great many Texans, a great many Americans feel that they don't have a voice. And so I hope to play some very small part in helping provide that voice for them. Madam President, I intend to speak in opposition to Obamacare. I intend to speak in support of defunding Obamacare until I am no longer able to stand. To do everything that I can to help Americans stand together and recognize this grand experiment 3.5 years ago is quite simply not working.
And unfortunately for Ted Cruz and people who would like to defund Obamacare and not see the language stripped out by Harry Reid, Republicans are opposing Ted Cruz and going after him, the establishment Republicans. They've even given opposition research to the likes of Chris Wallace, which he mentioned Sunday, as we played for you yesterday. With that in mind, I thought it would be very interesting to get someone who has thrown her hat into the ring in the great state of South Dakota. It is Dr. Annette Bosworth. She is a political outsider, small business owner, and obviously knows intimately about the impact of Obamacare on medicine. She joins us now. Dr. Bosworth, welcome.
Thank you, Crane.
Tell me, first, I've always wondered why people get into politics, especially in light of what happens, the character assassination from the beginning. You open up your family. I understand. I think it's great when people get involved, especially who've not been there before. But I also look at that and say, wow, did you consider what would take place if you did?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, there's a great experiment of what will happen to our country. And when you watch it play out right in front of you, one patient at a time, you instantly feel the connection of how powerful and important the people who make the rules of this country are. And medicine is a very amazing privilege that I am so grateful to be a part of. But I have a choice to either stand up for what I believe in right now or watch the profession that I have dedicated my heart and soul to crumble to a federal employee's job that is hyper-regulated and not there to serve the ones right in front of me. So I can choose to give up medicine in a couple years, or I can say, let me use a voice of a small business owner, a primary care physician who cares for people every day, continuing every day, and who is very compliant with what this law says doctors should do as a way to study and say there's no chance this was going to help them.
Why did you get into medicine?
Medicine is something that's not been in my tradition as far as family history. I'm a farmer's daughter, and when I was interviewing for medical school, the first one in my family to ever do so, they said, Annette, why would you want to be a doctor? I said, I hate hog chores, and there's got to be a way to serve the public. My mother is a longtime public servant through the Republican Party, through our small town of 700 people, through our church, And we are hardworking pioneers of South Dakota, heading to medical school so that I could use a way to serve people was a calling that matched in many levels, my faith, my ability to connect with people, and I'm just a little bit competitive, so it works out well that if you're doing well in school, medical school fits.
Well, please understand the reason for my question is I'm actually fascinated by people getting involved, but also encouraged by it. You mentioned your faith plays a key role in your life. You've spoken about it before. How has it been a part of your life? Is it your foundation?
Absolutely. I really believe God has been shaping my journey, specifically over the last 3 years, where in my state of South Dakota, I did stand up to big government. I was in a shelter that was 6 weeks from closing because they couldn't afford the medical costs. And I'm a private business owner. I understand medicine very well, and these are teenagers that they have a calling for my heart. You know, sex, drugs, rock and roll. These teenagers do too much. And I show up to say, let me help you keep this shelter open. I'll save you $200,000 a month, and there's only 65 kids. And I did that for 6 months running before somebody said, boy, that budget sure has changed since Dr. Bosworth showed up at the shelter. Must be something she's doing wrong. And that focus on my practice by the regulatory boards of our state completely collapsed my personal life. And I really believe God took away my house, my boats, my lake house, my abundant life, so that I could clear my focus for saying, why is it so important that big government doesn't run medicine? And without that pain of saying, I will give up all of these earthly things to keep this shelter open and to fight big government, I will not declare big bankruptcy. I will not do the things I don't believe in. I am a very articulate, educated, driven woman, and I know God was walking with me that whole story as a very painful process. I was serving the people in front of me, and when you get the crosshairs of a federal program or a government regulation on any small business and watch to see how much power, unrestrained power they have to say, it doesn't matter that you're doing the best job we've ever seen done in a shelter with one of the highest risk populations in the country. That doesn't matter. It matters that you didn't do it like everybody else. Therefore, it must be wrong. And I think that speaks volumes for what happens when big government comes into education, when big government comes into medicine. And somebody who has been on the front lines with a small business, educated through, my expert is health, needs to be the voice to say, you think this is improving the people, but I'm here to say it's not. And use that voice.
Our guest is Dr. Annette Bosworth. She is a candidate for U.S. Senate in the great state of South Dakota. Ted Cruz spoke about the divide between the establishment and those in America, the people not getting their voice, not connected. And it sounds like you understand that message big time because of what has happened to you and what you see every day. Tell me, if you were senator currently, the senator from South Dakota, how would you have responded and worked with or against Senator Cruz?
I would have stood with Senator Cruz today. I think he's being very, very authentic and courageous to say we need a different voice, and that comes with creating a stand. That comes with a strong level of knowing who you are, and he has a great example of that in our U.S. Senate. It is very, very valuable. You don't get that once you get to the United States Senate. You had better have been tested that resolve is true and strong before you get there. And he truly has that.
What do you like most about what you're doing now as a candidate, and what do you like least? I'm sorry, I know that sounds like kind of a fluff question, but genuinely it is an experience the vast majority of Americans have not experienced. And from your perspective of dealing what we deal with in a very pronounced way in the sense of being a small business owner as well as seeing the impact as a doctor, could you give us some insight into what you like most and what you what you dislike the most about the process?
Yes, the best part about this process has been that I have been frustrated with the apathy of not only those in my profession, but Americans not paying attention to how important this stuff of Washington, D.C. rules are. And from a very young age, I've not been very good at not talking about politics and religion. So this gives me a license to do that grandly. And it also, I believe my epitaph will say, God gave her courage and she used it. And I get to see that.
And the part you are not so fond of?
Asking everybody for money.
Well, we have rules on that, so let's not go into that. But we certainly understand, and it's a tough thing to do. But I want to have you back on the program because there's a lot I want to get to. But I just wanted to actually just get an intro to you about what you're doing. I think your story is fascinating, and it would be great to have you back on. Would you come back on the program?
Yes, sir. Great to talk with you, Crane.
All right. Great to speak with you. Dr. Annette Bosworth. People getting involved. She's been directly impacted by it, and this is not about support or not support. It's the fact that what it takes, what I spoke about last night with Hans von Spakovsky, about getting into the arena. And her faith being her foundation also gives another connection, obviously, that so many of us feel. Crane Durham's Nothing But Truth. Gun control debate on the flip side, and it's not boring. AFR talk.